Thank you very much for joining us on Sky TV again. And my guest on Hot Seat is a man with a double designation, and which double designation describes his function. Well, and each of those designations has the word president in it. He was once a celebrity in the media, but nowadays he's more connected to politics than the media. The shocking murder of his father more than 20 years ago is known as a serious blot on a country's politics as well as the judiciary. Well, he's the one I'm going to talk to, Mr. Kwabena Agyepong, Press Secretary to the President and Presidential Spokesperson. Thank you for joining us.
It's a pleasure, Philip.
How did you get this job, being the Press Secretary to the President?
Well, it's an appointment by the President, so I guess it's just like all the other presidential appointments. When the President is in office, he needs to have the full complement of his ministers and presidential staff to work with, and I'm one of such people at the castle who work at the behest of the President.
How do you know the President? Well, of course, he's not been president all his life, so how do you know him?
Well, I've known the President for a very long time. I mean, he's one of the nicest gentlemen you can ever know. Right from the days of Dan Kwabena through the 1992 election, through the 1995 primaries when he won. And because I have been playing quite an active role with the campaign team from 1992, as you said, because I used to work in the media as a presenter of sports highlights for many years, I used to be part of the campaign communications group. And once you do that kind of work, you get into contact with the leaders of the party. And that's how I got to know the President. I mean, he's a fine gentleman. He's one of the dedicated apostles of our philosophy of the Dan Kwabena tradition. And it's really a pleasure to work with him.
Before he appointed you, did you know that you had endeared yourself to him so much and had impressed him to the point where he would let you do what you're doing for him right now?
That's a difficult question to answer. What I can say is I'm naturally someone who, once he gets committed to doing something, I just go all for it. Once I got involved in politics and I decide for something, I just let it go. I put my whole body and soul together. And in the lead up to the elections in 2000, I was one of the prominent faces defending the NPP's program, espousing the ideals of the NPP, and speaking on behalf of the party on a number of issues on radio stations, TV stations, and TV programs, because I was virtually coordinating the campaign communications under the stewardship of Jake, who was the campaign manager.
So you call yourself a politician?
Well, I think all of us in every country, all of us somehow, you may call yourself a politician to a certain level. Politicians are those who just get themselves involved in the art of governance. And once you are serving the country, you are serving the country through serving a president. And it's politics. So it's not a profession. I wouldn't call it a profession per se, but it is a call to duty. And I have a duty to perform. So if that's what you call politicians, then maybe I qualify to be called one.
Political duty?
National duty, I think, is absolutely vital. The main motivation for being in governance is to try and do my level best, to try and help change the society. Because I think that Ghana needs people who are committed, dedicated to ensuring that the nation-state Ghana is held together, and with the best qualities and the best virtues informing the way we conduct ourselves, both in private and in public positions. And that is really my motivation. Because of my profession, which is civil engineering, I tend to travel around a lot. When I used to work as a materials engineer at the Ghana Highway Authority, most of the major roads around the country, you go and do what we call a pavement evaluation survey, you go and do a lot of topographical surveys, so you move around a lot. And when you move around in the country and you go to the communities and you see people, how they live and how they struggle with daily lives, it touches your heart. You have to begin to see, look, if you are privileged enough to be educated, then you have to put something back into the community. All of us have to work for the betterment of the lives of our countrymen.
Well, certainly you've started life, if indeed life starts at 40, because I know that you're at least 40. But let's wind back. Tell me about how you began.
Well, I was born on Independence Day, March 6, 1962. So I'm 42, coming 43 next year. In Kumasi to then lawyer Agyepong and Margaret Agyepong, that's my mother's name. And I did my primary education in a school called Royal International in Kumasi. That's where I did my primary education. And in those days of the common entrance examinations and all that, so you prepare. In the beginning, the school used to be called Modern City Academy. Modern City Academy. And the location is now where the secondary school is, Osei Chuchu Secondary School. So, and I quite recollect, I must have been 5 or 6. I still recollect my first day in school, and I fell into a small septic hole that had been dug. I remember that very distinctly. And I was pulled out with a ladder. And in those days, you go to kindergarten, they have this flask of is it Milo or some beverage. When they ask you questions and you get it all right, they give you a cup of beverage to drink. So I quite recollect those things. But I must have been 5 or 6.
And then you moved on, of course, to secondary school.
Well, secondary
and university.
school after common entrance examinations, God willing, I did very well. And therefore, in those days, you just file for the schools. And my father has some links to Takradio Secondary. He attended Secondary Methodist. And he went to Infantsipim School through that Methodist scholarship. And was very determined that I should go to the same school. So I got admitted to Infantsipim in 1974, October 4th, I remember that day. So that's when I started Form 1. In those days, you're only about 12 years, and you go and meet the big boys because you had formed about 7 streams from 1 to upper 6th. And one thing I quite recollect is in Infantsipim School, you had people from all different shades, you know, and you tend to group all of you about 15 or so in a dormitory. And you have children who came from different backgrounds. Some were farmers' children, some were former ministers' children, some were public servants' children. So that policy of boardinization is something that I still think we have to do something to restore, because it's got a potential to bring about social cohesiveness.
Which university did you move on to?
After sixth form, I went to Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology, where I read civil engineering.
So in your life, well, what did you aspire to become?
I must say, when I was young, when you're young, you have all sorts of dreams. I wanted to be an aeronautical engineer. I had a fascination with planes. I don't know where it dropped off, exactly when in my life it dropped off. But in Infantsipim School, I always go to the library, and we have this magazine called Flight, which was an aviation magazine. It shows you the planes, and I was interested in planes, and those days I could go and sit at the airport and just watch planes take off and that kind of thing. So, but at that time, there was no department in KNUST to do aeronautical engineering. There was no department like that. I hear now they are creating one with the Air Force and the Ghana Civil Aviation, so maybe it's about 20 or so years late, or 30 or so years late. So basically, yes, I got into KNUST, and then I did civil engineering. And I loved it, because in sixth form, especially when you're doing maths, physics, and chemistry, there are quite a number of options. You can either do medicine, do engineering, or do any of the other courses like maths, computer science, but I settled on civil engineering.
And you never thought of politics?
I guess at that time, no. I got into politics in university, very early. I think it was because of the experience we went through in 1982, when the Rawlins took over the reins of government from President Liman. And the students' leadership was largely socialist. I mean, they were the ones who said we should go to the hinterland and go and load cocoa sacks, and we all took part in that. But after some 3 months, most of us were very anxious to go back to school. And we then had a NUCS leader who was, you know, in university, you have those who are essentially leftist, socialist, and the rest of us not particularly interested in politics. But that alone galvanized a lot of us who moved in and campaigned rather hard to remove the socialists. So we had a new National Union of Ghana Students leader then. I tend to forget his name these days. But I remember that's when Dan Boche became one of the executive members, and we had, he was, I think, secretary, and Hans Jaba was the treasurer.
And you knew Dan Boche personally then?
Yes, right from University of Science and Technology.
Let us come back to your present job. Speaking for the president, being the president's secretary, how difficult is it?
Well, it's a very challenging job, and I feel humbled by the responsibility. The fact that every now and then, not every now and then, every day, and because of the vibrant nature of the media landscape today, there are over 80 radio stations around the country. So the requests on a daily basis are huge. And we are speaking to stations as far afield as in Enchi, as in Kufour, as in Domahinkro.
You are heard everywhere.
Well, that's part of the job. And,
do you write the president's letters?
No. The job does not include writing his letter. He's got a private secretary who does that.
So, well,
basically,
press secretary, right?
The press secretary, you are like the liaison, the link between the president and the media, and by extension, the populace. Okay, and the job really is a 24-hour job. You never know what may break out in the news media. There's a report, you have to explain. You have to be in constant touch with your boss.
How often does the president call you? Like now, I've engaged you on Sky TV, on Hot Seat right now. The president couldn't call you, so if he needed you now?
Well, I think he structured it. He doesn't need to call me. I have to report to him on a structured basis what happens. I mean, for instance, once I got in here yesterday, I quickly have to get to him, and then he will give me I'll report to him what has transpired.
So how often do you talk to him?
I don't know whether you need all these details, but at least once a day.
And you have his mobile number? Does he use a mobile
yes,
phone?
He does, but the numbers are delisted. He does. In today's world, you have to be in use of a mobile phone. You need it. What is crucial is that I have to stay on top of the message. I mean, what I've noticed and what I find very interesting is anytime I've not been at a function, anytime I've not, like the president's functions, you have to cover it. And you have to sit in there and listen to what he said, because sometimes people report it differently, or they place the emphasis on different things, and you have to manage that. And one thing I've noticed, a very funny streak, anytime I've missed some of his engagements, that's when the next morning you get calls, you know, and then you were not there, so you have to be careful and you manage all these things. But I've got staffers also in my office who, even if I'm not present, they cover every assignment, and we record some of these things and we put it in our own library, so we can tell that this is what the president said on this occasion, so and so, this is how it was reported.
So is it, how heavy a burdening is it having to be so close to the president, contacting him at will, and telling him or giving him your understanding of things and representing him in public?
Well, like I said, it's a challenging job. And I feel humbled by the experience, by the fact that the #1 citizen of the state can trust you to be the first line of or the last line of defense, if I may put it that way, to try and explain some of the things, the decisions he has taken, and answer questions, and as they say in American parlance, to take the heat for him, you know. So it's very challenging, but it shapes you in different ways, especially because our party is such an intertwined network of people, because we were in a position for so long. We've had to fall on ourselves to work hard together at the grassroots. And this is the first opportunity we've had in a long time to be in government. So normally there are people who want to get to the president, who want to send messages to the president. And so you are inundated with requests. That aside from a professional job, I mean, I'll get to that one about requests for interviews from outside and locally and all that. You have to plan and program all these things to ensure that the president has adequate time to do his work, which is very essential. But if you come to my office in Accra, you think I'm a medical consultant. There's a whole line of people every day who come up, and it's important that we give access, because you never know what message they're coming with. So I'll make it a point that between 3 o'clock and 5 o'clock on a daily basis, my office is open.
Do you reject some people?
No.
Throw them away?
No, never done that. Anything that they have to say. I mean, there was one occasion that I had to call in security because I thought that the guy was mentally imbalanced, but they could not detect it. So he had come to see me. So he comes to you and then he starts speaking, and you could see that he's a bit incoherent, and the request he's making is unreasonable. And then some people will come and say they've had a message from God, and that the message has to be delivered to the president. And whatever way you try to tell them that you can't do that, and they can get sometimes a bit aggressive. There's been only one occasion where I've called in security to try and help me take somebody out of my office. But by and large, if you welcome them well, you speak to them well, show respect to them, and understand their posture, they will be understanding of you as well.
Well, it's almost a presidential hot seat. Kwabena Agyepong on it. And when we come back, we'll look at Kwabena Agyepong again through the eyes of his father, who was murdered, which murder is described as a shame to Ghana. When we come back.
Princess Cinema Sana baby o. I can't count na you going to school 12:15. You course online. You get your ticket and sign in the action. This time on Sky TV remain yen dem bio. Sina wo fie the type chu. Over 12:15 on 9:30 p.m. Pe yes Ghanaian and Nigerian films papa na yes bro mashe. Men ko baby Sky TV Princess Cinema. You're by no more.
We are back on the hot seat with Kwabena Agyepong. Well, your work, sometimes it gets muddy, and you are accused, even from the government machinery itself. Is that one of the difficult areas, difficult points of the work?
I'm not quite sure what you want to say.
Like you speak something, say something, and they say it doesn't represent government's view?
I think it's only happened once. And it did not say I did not represent government view. It said I spoke without checking authority lines. These things do happen because sometimes that's why I said you have to be in constant touch with the president. And at the presidency, the way things work, things may change in a short time, or a position may have changed, and you have to apprise yourself of that development. But I like living on the edge. I think that I thoroughly enjoy the job, the challenge of it. I don't have it at all as a problem when you're under pressure. I take it in my stride, and so therefore I feel very comfortable with what I do. And as Ghana well put it, said I was very nearly the first casualty of the Gulf War.
Some critics say that government's information machinery is inadequate. They point to the fact that people have been changed. There was Elizabeth Ohene, then there was Jacob Echebilante, and all of that. Now it's you.
No, it's not me. There's a difference between the government's main machinery, which is run by the Ministry of Information. That has a big duty. It runs the machinery and the bureaucracy of the Ministry of Information. That's quite simply different from my work as press secretary to the president, which has to do with the happenings at the presidency. But people tend to underestimate the job itself in managing information all over the world. I mean, it's not only in Ghana, especially in today's liberalized atmosphere. It is always going to be a tall order trying to manage information. It's a very difficult job. And so one has to appreciate the kind of lens these people you've mentioned have gone to try and explain things to the society. It's not easy at all. And one has to recognize that against the background of the new developments in journalism and in the vibrant media landscape that we have in Ghana today. So I think the government has done quite well with managing information. You have a media that is far more aggressive than it used to be. I mean, these days there's nothing that you can hide. I've seen some media personnel brandish cabinet papers on TV. And
it surprises you?
Of course. I mean, these things are listed as secret. You are not supposed to do that. Even when you see it, you are not supposed to bring it to studio and show that you are in custody of something that is secret and confidential, because you are breaching the law. And some people have pushed it to the periphery. I mean, if you went and took them on, they would say, oh, you are trying to emasculate the media. So we've allowed a few issues like that to go unpunished. But it's not correct. It's not right. When you see a document that is secret and confidential, you may look at it, but you are not supposed by law to handle it and bring it out into the open. It's not done.
And the alleged aggression of some of the media practitioners, journalists, sometimes get you angry, and some people criticize you for it, for getting angry at some of them.
I don't think, well, we're all human. Maybe once in a while you may overstep your temperament, but I'm normally a very calm person, and I'm very religious, so I've trained myself not to be angry at all. It's all in a day's job, in a day's work. I have my work to do. People have to simply accept that I'm doing a job. Why should people attack you personally for wanting to do your work well? You can criticize me on my work, but that has nothing to do with my persona.
So what's your religion?
I'm a Christian. I'm a Methodist. I told you my father attended Second-D Methodist here.
Well, just in case you've changed it.
Well, I understand that I'm still a Methodist. I fellowship at Kwabena Methodist Church in Accra. So I'm deeply religious, and I believe that once you believe in divine intervention, you are always going to be protected when you have good intentions. And my intention is to do my work to the best of my ability. If there are a few transgressions, I'm sorry for that. But the important thing is, what I've noticed with the media today is they spend all the time firing questions at you. You try to ask them one or two clarifications on their own questions, and they can't take the heat. And I say to you, if you expect politicians to be tolerant, you should be tolerant yourself. And I'm sure maybe that's the kind of style people think is a bit aggressive, and they tend to think that it is an arrogant posture. It's not at all. I'm just trying to do my work.
So how long are you going to be, how long are you going to have the chance to do your work? How long do you reckon?
I don't have any control over that. That we all serve at the pleasure of the president. I mean, he decides who is in his working team. So that is left to the president to make those decisions.
So if out of his pleasure he says, well, I'm appointing a different person?
He's entitled to do so. The Constitution allows the president to do so, to bring together any amount of people from whichever directions that he thinks is convenient for him to do his work. And I believe that that is his prerogative as president. We should all respect that.
Let's leave the politics for a while. Back into your media, your experience in the media. What are the moments you remember that still stay with you?
Well, I'll never forget covering the 1988 Olympic Games in Seoul, in Korea. Those were the days I used to host sports highlights for Ghana television. Those days there was no privately owned media. It was only state media. And to have the opportunity to go and see the likes of Carl Lewis and Ben Johnson and Florence Griffith Joyner and those athletes and Evelyn Ashford. And I love sports deeply. Very many sports, not only football. And I'm a student of sports history. So if you came to my house, you see a fat library of sports tapes and books and all that. And I encourage people who are into sports presentation that they should be historians of sport. That only helps you. And that's the one thing I miss about that, the media interaction, is sports commentary. I still miss it. I wish I could still run football commentary for Ghana television because I thoroughly enjoyed it. I'm not quite familiar with the players we have these days, but they've been great opportunities for me. I mean, I also had the opportunity to look at the Junior World Cup in Scotland in 1989. And I sat in the commentary box with Pele, you know. And
Pele. There are two Peles we know.
Or Edson Arantes dos Nascimento. I'm talking about the Brazilian Pele. You know, so... And I covered the Barcelona Olympics in 1992, the Atlanta Games in 1996.
But you didn't go to Sydney 2000?
It was very close to the elections in 2000. So this is the second consecutive Olympic
Games. It means you prefer, you love politics more than sports.
Well,
because when sports called in Sydney, you didn't go, you stayed in Ghana.
Well, the situation was different. We're getting close to the elections in 2000, and I was really key with the campaign team, so I had a lot of work to do.
Well, so
I'm still trying to watch the Athens Olympics as we have it now. Thanks to digital television, so you can see everything in your home.
So listeners will have to know that this is being recorded at the time. I think it's the third day of the 2004 Athens Olympics. So that's for your information. So, Mr. Agyepong, so one of these days I would want to send the TV crew as well as the sports crew, so they come to your home and you tell them about sports.
Yes, you're just saying, I mean, not long ago, one of the radio stations called me and I had a short discussion with them talking about the chances of the Meteors at the Olympic Games. I have to say, frankly, because of the load schedule that I have not consistently followed football and sports, for that matter, with the same passion that I used to do it when I was hosting the program and also when I was really reporting for some radio stations. In fact, in 1996, I reported for Radio Gold from Atlanta, and I was giving a live reportage on especially our soccer matches and interviews with Coach Ade and the like.
Kwabena Agyepong, where were you? What were the circumstances when your father was murdered? He was one of the 3 judges murdered in 1982 in Ghana.
Yeah, that's correct. I was at home with him. If you listen to what I said during the NRC sit-ins, I believe it was a Wednesday. Again, I had gone to watch football. If my memory serves me right, it was House of Oak versus Cornerstones. It was a knockout match. And because I was so much an avid Kotoko follower, I always go and support the teams that play against House of Oak. And that day, House of Oak won 1-0 against Kumasi Cornerstones. And I had come home in the evening. Those were the days of the curfew. So I was just sitting in the hall, and my father was having his dinner. It must have been close to curfew time. The exact time, I'm not sure I can tell you, but somewhat around 9 o'clock, 9:30 was those days. I think curfew was, I'm not so sure the time, but thereabouts. And there was a knock. The house help just came in and said there was some people outside. They wanted to see my dad because Mrs. Krantiado was very sick and needed to be taken to the Ridge Hospital. And we were staying at Ridge in Accra, if you know the geography of Accra very well, on the Castle Road, very close to the State House. And that is only about maybe 500 meters from the Ridge Hospital. So my dad was in the middle of a meal, and he asked for the lady to bring down his native slippers. And he went off with them in the hope that he was going to see to the health of Mrs. Cecilia Krantiado. We did not notice that anything untoward was happening. So I continued writing. I was writing a letter to a friend, really. And so I continued writing my letter. We all went to bed. It was only the next morning that I had a knock on the door again. And then in came Mrs. Sarkodie, who was coming to report to her dad that something had happened the night before. Apparently they saw what happened. I mean, the abductors pulled out a gun and prevented the watchman from intervening and things like that. So they knew something wrong had happened. We did not notice any such thing on the night. So it was only after she came to tell us. I went up to my daddy's room to go and speak to him. Then I realized he was not there. So I was then alarmed, and the area had a lot of judges staying. So I just went to Justice Eduse, who was just across, and then I informed him what had happened. So he called the then Chief Justice, Mr. Apalu, who then confirmed that there had been some abductions. So that's how it happened. That's how.
So when did you know he was killed?
On Sunday. Sunday.
How many days after? Well,
Thursday,
Wednesday.
Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Sunday. That's
Was it
when
a confirmation on Sunday, or you had had an idea?
only we never knew anything. We were all hoping that they were missing or they had been abducted, and those 3 days was real hell because we just continued to sit around the house praying and hoping that somehow he will pop up.
How much pain does it represent to you?
I told you I was a deeply religious person. I could not talk about this in such a manner if there was pain. These things you leave it to God because it's God that runs us. I believe in divinity. And so there is no pain at all in my heart. I wouldn't have been able to live my life if I was living with pain. I mean, at that time I was 20 years in the first year university. I went through hell to look after myself in school and all that. But frankly, I'm a happy person. It's unfortunate that it had to happen because the whole family had to be scattered because we were quite a lot in numbers. My brothers and sisters, you know, we had to find places to perch.
How much do you miss him?
Oh, I really miss him to the day because he likes to converse and he likes to give you history, and he will discuss to you when he was in Form 5, that was when they were having the Second World War, and tell you a lot about the history of politics in the country. And so I enjoyed that. And he also loved football. So he gave me a lot of insight into old footballers like James Ajay and Griffin, and you keep on and on and on about Infum and all that.
Was it one of the reasons why you got to like sports?
I guess so, because when I was young, he would take me to the stadium. I think, again, I can recollect very clearly, there was a match between Kotoko and BA United. It must have been in the 60s somewhere, because I was very young. In those days, BA used to wear black, yellow, black, you know, that kind of staggered. I remember that scene, Kotoko were in red, with the likes of Abukari and Sunday. I was a kid then. I must have been 8 or 9, or I'm not sure what exactly it was, but I can recollect, I can see it, you know. So he was a bit of a friend to me. Not a bit, I mean, real friend. I would discuss things with me, and I guess because I was the eldest son. I mean, my first 2 siblings are girls. So he used to get on with me a lot more, and so we had a lot of chat together. We developed a relationship. So when he was out of my life, it was a very difficult and big hole to fill. But by the grace of God, you tend to accept these things, you move on, and you are determined, because I know that he will be determined for me to succeed in life.
Tell me about what you think about Ghana right now. You're one of the rulers.
Yeah, I think that President Kufour has brought renewed respect and dignity to governance, to the presidency, by his conduct. He has shown a certain large heart, an ability to discourse, and he's not overly power drunk, not at all. I have worked with him closely, and I've not seen him change one bit. You can talk to some of our party activists. I mean, you see President Kufour of today, and he behaves the same way that he used to behave long ago. He's a very friendly character. He cracks it. I said to him one day that I wish I could sneak a camera when he's not watching, so I can take a lot of his jokes. He's the funniest man. I mean, he's got so much humor. He can tell you fantastic stories. You have a good laugh. I mean,
is it true he's a stammerer?
He said to me when he was young, but it has improved. But these things, it's such that even as you grow, little vestiges of it remain. That's what he said to me. But since I've known him, I think that defect is largely repaired.
Election 2004, some people are afraid that it's going to turn violent.
Not at all. Ghanaians are not violent people. And we have one country, we're all prepared to do what is necessary to ensure that we have a violent-free election. Come on, we are not the kind of group, haven't seen the kind of difficulties this country has gone through. We're not going to resort to what we've seen in the past. Gone were the days when we get into elections like this. They'll move troops to different regions, say they are doing military exercises, get fighter aircraft to fly low and send in their propagandists to threaten people. If you don't vote this direction, there'll be war. We are not going to do that. President Kufour has said very clearly that he wants to be judged on his record in office. And even the kind of way he has been able to demystify governance. Today, every media house who wants to have a correspondent at the castle has one. In those days, only the state media were allowed into the castle. And in those days, you could not even talk to the president. 20 years, no local journalist was able to interview the president. That's for a fact. Okay? Now, the president, sometimes when there is time, is able to organize media encounters. He's organizing people's assemblies. He's demystified governance. He's tried to reach out to the people. He's repealed the criminal libel law so that journalists are not going to be put in jail for the kinds of things they write. I mean, some of the things they write are appalling. Well, nobody's going to jail them for that.
Mr. Agyepong, as if ignoring the quality of modesty, I want to say it's a fact that Sky Television, Sky Power FM, is the most powerful media in the Western region, holding aloft the region's flag, if we have one. When would you arrange for the president to speak to Western region media exclusively and preferably on Sky TV?
I think it will be a good opportunity for him to reach out to the people of the Western region. The president has a very tight schedule, and I believe when you start your normal, you are in stride in your programming, and his calendar takes him to the Western region. I'll do my utmost best to present this opportunity to him to speak to his citizens in the Western region. The Western region is one of the most important regions in the country, and the president attaches a lot of importance to the work that he's doing here, and to ensure that the years of neglect, that we are able to roll back the years of neglect in this region. So he's very open to having interviews. I'm sure you're aware of that. So once the opportunity comes and we can schedule it to fit into what he's doing, we'll do our best to do that, to let that happen.
What are his chances in the 2004 election?
I think they are very bright, very, very bright, but nobody's being complacent. We are not going to rest on our oars. This party, as we speak, is going around educating our polling station executives, and we have a cadre of over 120,000 polling station executives.
What are the chances of the opposition?
Well, I'll talk about our chances, and I know that our chances are bright. We've had 7 by-elections. I was disappointed that the last by-election in the central region, factually, is Professor Mills's region. They did not have the courage and the guts to put up a candidate. It just goes to show you that they know they are chasing a lost cause. It's very clearly the people of Ghana have seen the 10, 11 years of the dictatorship and the Rawlings. They've seen the 8 years of the NDC, and they're comparing it to the 4 years of President Kufour. There's a marked difference.
You've been in opposition, so how has the opposition done?
Well, I think that they sometimes behave as if politics is about life and death. When we're in opposition, we're not behaving that way. Politics is about service to the people, that you should not use desperate measures, that you have to throw as much mud as possible and move on a certain track of just fabricating things and hoping that people will believe your fabrications. That kind of negative thing is not good for building a nation.
But they also keep saying you harass them, you intimidate their leaders.
It's not important to just keep saying. It's important to be factual. You are a media person. Do you see us harassing and intimidating them?
When Professor Mills traveled, you went to his house. Well, the security went to his house, and Professor Mills and the opposition said it was harassment.
That was one single breach, and we apologize for it. You cannot call that harassment. That does not constitute harassment. You know what harassment is? Harassment is taking people from their homes and putting them in the castle and shaving them. And when their parents come and talk about it, you send them to court and have them jailed for 2 years, for 2 months. That is harassment of the ordinary citizens. We have not harassed anybody. All the cases that have been brought up by the AG's department, people have been given legal opportunities to do what they can do within the ambit of the legal arrangements we have in this country, in their time. The generals who were shot, the people whose businesses were taken away from them in 1982 to 1985, the 750 people who were listed as dead or missing. They never were given an opportunity.
Mr. Kwabena Agyepong, we have to end it here. Well, he's an independence child because he said he was born on the 6th of March in a certain year. I believe it's in the 1960s.
62 for
62. Well,
1962, March
well,
6th.
so he's been on the hot seat today. Kwabena Agyepong, thank you very much.
It's a pleasure
for coming.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you.